And then we go for the big sit-down interview as Renee chats with Kenny Omega and Will Ospreay. And she essentially had three questions, which were PWG, Wrestle Kingdom, Forbidden Door, and then if allowed, let's talk about All In. That was it. That was the whole thing. And then these guys were just going to be off to the races. And I thought Kenny generally was pretty great here as like the smug senior to Will. That it was just, he was very good at being dismissive of Will in such a insincere way, like just like the false flattery of like, you're really good for your level.
I wasn't blown away when I first met him, but I saw the potential.
They set this right up with their first match in PWG, December of 2015, when Ospreay admits he was out of his depth. He was a fan of Kenny Omega. Remember 2015? Like that's before he even goes to New Japan. So like this is much earlier in his career. And Omega referred to him. He's like, at the time I was always interested in the flavor of the month, the internet darling, and I saw the potential. Wasn't blown away by him then. It was great. It was a really good like dismissive response to their first meeting. Then we just go to Wrestle Kingdom 17, which is quite the giant leap here, as Omega says that by that point, Ospreay had changed. He had become the face of New Japan. He had taken my spot. But this was the Tokyo Dome. That's a big venue. They had to sell tickets. And therefore, they had to call me because Will can't do that on his own. Ospreay mentions, you fail to mention building that company off the broken backs of men like Tanahashi, Naito, and Okada. And then we get the COVID debate. Just what I wanted here for this extra flavor for All In, as Will explains all the restrictions they were under in New Japan when they were losing money and the talent had to take pay cuts, and talked about the different protocols of Will having to fly 15 hours to Japan, then quarantine inside of a hotel for 2 weeks, only to wrestle in silence. While Kenny, you just had to make a 3-hour drive and wrestle in front of guys in the locker room that are all marks for you. Omega says, or he says, Omega, you could have never handled the same situation in Japan. Omega says, we dealt with the same thing here in America, and said, even if you had fans, would they even be that loud for you anyway? I thought the COVID stuff was like, it was a little much of like how much they were going into this stuff. I thought we were
like what, too deep, too inside?
Not even too inside. It was just like too far away from like the point. It was like, what are we arguing about here? Like, who had a shittier time during the pandemic? It was fine. Like they're trying to, create this animosity that, you left the company and I was the soldier at its worst time. It was fine.
I felt it gave a chance for Ospreay to dig into some real life frustration. I mean, so one of the first promos he cut that like got his speaking ability on people's radar was about that exact subject, right? I believe it was actually cut on Kenny ahead of that.
It was right before the Wrestle Kingdom match. That press conference
where he spoke about this exact same thing, and there was clearly some real frustration and just like I want to even say trauma, attached to it all. And I think like to give space for Ospreay to get that passion out there in this promo, I thought that was worthwhile, certainly.
Bruv, you were deemed an essential service. In Florida, you guys operated in Florida. There were no restrictions at all. So then they fast forward to Forbidden Door 2023, and Omega says how he had trusted Don Callis, but then Don turned on him, and he grew to respect Ospreay, but Will had to recruit Don Callis, and Ospreay explains, because you tore me apart at Wrestle Kingdom, you showed me no mercy. I still have the scars on my forehead to show it, and it keeps Ospreay up at night, regretting using Don Callis at that match at Forbidden Door, because he goes online and the victory means nothing because of having to rely on Don Callis. Omega says, I forgive you, Will, for admitting you could not do it without Don Callis or that screwdriver. This isn't a rubber match because really it's 2-0. And I was like, they have taken the psychology of this completely in a different direction. Now Will has never beaten Kenny Omega.
And I think that's perfectly fine because
Oh yeah, it's fine. Like they made sense of it.
It made the story now not necessarily these two settling a grudge as equals, but Osprey chasing after the person he has never beaten.
And they're so telegraphing some involvement of Don Callis in this whole thing. Like whether it's like he is thwarted, but it just feels like he has to be part of this in some way, shape, or form. Renee, my favorite part of this is Renee stating, you know, Kenny, since that last match at Forbidden Door, you both have gone through major health ailments. And Omega is just, yes. If you don't mention it, Excalibur will. Yes, I had diverticulitis. And he says, it forced me to change and become a better and smarter wrestler because now I use my head. And he asks Will, are you a better wrestler after having neck fusion surgery on 3 discs? Osprey says that Omega has never seen me as my equal. Omega thinks that Osprey wanted him to win because this would be an easier path than beating MJF. Osprey denies that. He says he needs to beat Kenny at his best to become that. And the fact is, Will, you always crumble under the pressure. Will says he can't crumble this time. He has to do it on his own. It's been a 10-year chase to be better than Kenny. And Omega just says, you're going to fail again. And brings up his mother. And this prompts Will to stand up. Don't you bring up my mother. He says, well, your mother will still respect you after you lose. But I think your 7-year-old boy might need a new hero. And this is too much for Will. Overall, like a pretty strong segment that the two had here.
I thought it was outstanding. Like personally, to me, like it kind of harkens back to, you know, like maybe some of the more memorable sit down interviews that we've had prior to like your big WrestleMania main event, like you know, your Rock Hogan before 17, for instance. And I thought this was in league with that, if not like maybe more of an updated sort of like realistic version of all of that. You know, this was a lot more deeply rooted in history that spans the boundaries of not just AEW and not even just New Japan, but like their entire careers that at least has been recorded. And, you know, a lot of people may have not seen a lot of what they were mentioning here, but I thought the conversation made it perfectly easy to follow along and catch you up, regardless of whether or not you were watching New Japan or watching PWG at the time. It's no more difficult than like watching an Avengers movie or Spider-Man, John, and then like catching up on some of the details, even though you didn't watch, No Way Home, right?
Well, in this one, it actually pays dividends if you didn't see Forbidden Door, because the outcome now is actually the opposite. So Will is still chasing that elusive victory.
But, you know, like mentioning all of this and again, hearing them passionately speak about it, I think adds a lot of depth and make this grudge feel a lot more deeply rooted and real than just, you know, like your typical title match, right? They, you know, by the end, I thought painted a really strong picture of a guy trying to earn his idol's respect. You know, by sort of like discrediting his own victory over him. And I thought Omega was such a great dick in all this. Like this, you know, to this moment in the show, I thought was Omega at like just a good amount of heel that I thought was like still made his character believable. I thought he kind of went over the deep end. Like,
yeah, I was going to say by the end of the show, like, it's an interesting choice. I think it is the right dynamic. Like, instead of just being like the two respectful baby faces, that it's like subtlety, they're ramping that up because
you have
they know
it's Wembley.
I think you need the grudge element, and I think they're banking on that. For these last 10 days, they want this version to really sell this grudge. And more importantly, coming out of this segment, it is like, yes, Will is chasing this title, but he's also chasing like the ghost of Kenny Omega, like in his own history, that this takes on another layer of achievement that he is trying to pull off at Wembley, and putting Kenny into like, they do not want to have a 60-40 crowd at Wembley. They want like a 90-10 crowd for Will on this night, and a gigantic celebratory moment at the end of it.
Agreed. And I think Osprey has been so strong. To me, like he greatly exceeds the standards of acting you would expect out of a professional wrestler. I thought his delivery in these speeches, he was able to sell like motivation, some of the torture behind, you know, that motivation, really, really well in every instance he got to speak here. So
Did you see the new videos that they're starting to put out?
I just saw the clip. I haven't seen the actual
really good stuff. They documented Will's whole. They've only put out the first video, and it's short. It's 5 or 6 minutes, and it is like the day. It's like the day of his surgery and going into the hospital, and it ends with him being wheeled into surgery. It's excellent. Like it's. I'm sure they're going to be rolling out a bunch of these over the coming week and a half, but like he talks about. Like there's just these moments at his house. He talks about his social anxiety. He talks about just how scared he is about this surgery. And I mean, part of it is you hear him. This is dated like September. And he's like, man, I just hope I can make it to Wembley. And I was like, that's a perfectly logical hope in September. And then this guy, he came back within like, he's been back for months and months at this point. Like he blew past anyone's expectation level for a comeback.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out. Thanks for
They're very good, or at least this first one. That's all they put out so far. Very good. And so Copeland attacks the Bucks, and they all brawl to the back, and Kenny is left alone in the ring. Show over? No. Out comes Will Ospreay, who comes out and he tells Kenny, "You've got about as much charm as a parking ticket," and says that he's a prick for bringing up his 7-year-old son. So Omega then calls upon security to remove Will. On what grounds, we don't know, but these two goofs come out and
he's
they're going to
EVP, I guess, is what they explain.
Okay. I guess he has that power then. So look at this one guy. So they go to take him out.
Sounds like he's 15 years old. He might be the 7-year-old son.
And then on the way out, Kenny calls him a little English bitch. And he doesn't want to see Will until Wembley. So Ospreay runs, you wouldn't believe this, but he overpowered security and made it into the ring. He attacks Kenny, but as security holds down Will, he's hit by a V-trigger, and then he drapes the belt in front of Will on the apron, tells him to take one last look, and lifts up Will because the table is still set up on the floor, and hits a one-winged angel off the apron through the table. And this is when Kenny hits his W.H. Park approval rating. This was Ken Chan.
This was water guzzling Kenny Omega. Yeah.
Salutations, William. We are off to Wembley.
Oh my God. Yeah. I felt like I understand the booking of all of this. You wanted to like maybe hit every single one of these big matches, ahead of the big show, but I did not. I thought it was all too long by the end. So to me, it was more of an issue of timing of the show in general. I also felt like in Kenny Omega's performance, as much as I liked it and actually loved it during the sit-down interview, here he took it way too far and way too mustache twirly for my liking. You know, what you got in the sit-down interview was I thought somebody who you could still buy is most of the time a babyface, but just along with Will Ospreay, you know, Ospreay just somehow ignites a side of him that like is just sort of a dick, right? But a subtle dick in throwing lines like, I saw potential, but I wasn't that impressed. Here, this was just like comic book villain, Kenny Omega that I thought was maybe a little bit too much for my liking.
I mean, it's what they were going for here. I mean, it was I thought overall, like the Omega Ospreay stuff, like there were a lot of angles with them on this show. Like they pushed this really hard, and as they should be at this stage of everything. We are wrapping up the summer big on the Post Wrestling Cafe as John Pollock and Neil Flanagan are flying to London, England for live on-the-ground coverage of AEW All in London. Also this month, we conclude our reviews of Dark Side of the Ring and WWE Unreal Season 3, reviews of ROH's Death Before Dishonor and TNA Lockdown, Rewind Away will cover the WWF Aggression album, and Book Club will cover Total Nonstop Agony by Vince Russo. Sign up now at postwrestlingcafe.com.